Joining me now, CBS News political director Steve Chaggaris. We just heard Sean Spicer talk about the security clearance process. Why do you believe he's highlighting that now, and why is that so important?
Well, it's curious that he's blaming the Obama administration for this, because frankly, this is a choice of the Trump administration, the Trump transition, to ask Michael Flynn to be the national security advisor. And there were serious red flags about Michael Flynn when they made this choice, and it raises really a lot of questions about the transition team's vetting. It raises questions about Trump's judgment, and I think that Spicer sort of trying to pass this off as the Obama administration's fault is them sort of trying to shift blame for something that really is the Trump administration's fault. And
he was also let go by the Obama administration. So if there was nothing to hide, Steve, why not just hand over these documents?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to really speculate too much. They have said that one of the reasons why that they don't want to hand this stuff over is because there's classified information in there, and you sort of have to take them at their word on that. This is Elijah Cummings, who's alleging a cover-up, who's a Democrat looking into this. So there is some politics to be played here. But if you have to raise the question: one, is the administration embarrassed by the mistake that they made of actually hiring Flynn when there were, again, pretty obvious red flags regarding his ties to Russia, regarding his lobbying for Turkey? These things would have been found pretty easily if there was some real vetting that went on in terms of Flynn when he was picked. The other part of this, too, is sort of sensitive in the sense that Flynn, it could be called to answer questions in front of 3 different investigations into the Russian meddling. You don't really want to instigate or antagonize a guy who could really sort of spill the beans if there's anything to be spilled there. And so maybe that's part of this as well. But again, I don't want to get too much into speculation on that.
I want to ask you also about NAFTA. The president said today that he'd renegotiate NAFTA after earlier saying he might actually terminate that. I want to play you a bit of that soundbite.
Mm-hmm. I was going to terminate NAFTA as of 2 or 3 days from now. The president of Mexico, who I have a very, very good relationship, called me. And also the prime minister of Canada, who I have a very good relationship, and I like both of these gentlemen very much. They called me. And they said, rather than terminating NAFTA, could you please renegotiate? I like them very much. I respect their countries very much. The relationship is very special. And I said, I will hold on the termination. Let's see if we can make it a fair deal.
I'm curious what you're hearing from lawmakers about this shift in strategy.
Well, I mean, first of all, we call it a shift in strategy, but after following this guy for as long as we've followed him, I don't think we should be surprised with what is transpiring here. The fact that he started out by saying, I want to kill NAFTA, I want to terminate NAFTA, this is classic Donald Trump Art of the Deal. And I pulled the beginning of chapter 2 from Art of the Deal, where he says, quote, my style of deal making is quite simple and straightforward. I aim very high, and then I just keep pushing and pushing to get what I'm after. Sometimes I settle for less than I thought, but in most cases I still end up with what I want. So this is a classic example. He's pushing, he's laying out the beginning of a negotiation, which is fine. I don't like NAFTA, so I'm just going to kill it. All of a sudden, guess what happens? The phone rings, and it's the Canadian Prime Minister and the Mexican President saying, wait, don't pull the plug on this. Let's deal on this. So that's what I think we're seeing. It's not the first time we've seen this with him, whether it's in business or since he's become president. So we shouldn't be too shocked that this is the direction it's going. I don't think folks on Capitol Hill are that shocked that it's, I think they're happy that he's actually shifted a bit to talking about renegotiation. There were some Republicans yesterday who were saying, wait a minute, don't pull the plug on this thing. But again, I think if everybody just steps back and listens to how Donald Trump gets into these negotiations, I think we should all it would help everybody to remember that he's always going to go in aiming for the most extreme position on this, and I think wind up somewhere a little bit less than that.
Okay, and at the same time, the president also released his tax plan, or at least that one sheet of paper there, sort of a bit of his own outline, but the page was just one page, Steve. Mm-hmm. How are lawmakers on both sides reacting to that proposal?
Well, I think what you're hearing from lawmakers is, first of all, they're getting the basic parameters of what he wants to do, which is a very large tax cut. And the question for members of the Senate and the House is, how do we fill in those blanks? Because it's really going to be their job to fill in the blanks, at least fill in the details, and make sure that they get a bill that can, for Republicans, get a bill that can get passed through the House and Senate and to the president's desk within the parameters the president has set. Again, you get asked the question, are these parameters at the level of, I don't necessarily want exactly what I just said, but I'll get close to it, and if I can get close to it, I'll be happy, just like he's been talking about in the art of the deal, or is this something that he is insistent on? We'll see what happens. But Republicans on the Hill, I think, are a little concerned, at least especially the deficit hawks, are wondering how is he planning on paying for all these tax cuts. This is an expensive proposition to cut the taxes that he wants to cut, and Republicans have serious questions about that. And I think there are some nerves among some Republicans on Capitol Hill about how are we going to do this. We can't just cut taxes and rely on economic growth to pay for it. You've got to pay for it in some other way. So those are the kinds of questions that Congress is facing, Republicans in Congress are facing. We'll see how they deal with it over the coming months.
And we know that on health care, the House Freedom Caucus, the conservative group, is backing a revised health care bill. Do we know what's inside it at this point?
Yeah, generally they're lifting some mandates on some of the states involving specific requirements, including charging the same rates to healthy and sick people. The issue here is, at least among Republicans, is this is something that conservatives really like because it's going to make Obamacare, health care cost less for the federal government. But on the flip side, and this is what we saw during the negotiation before the original Obamacare repeal and replace, is that now the other side, moderate Republicans, aren't so happy with this idea because, frankly, they're thinking that people are going to lose coverage or it's going to become more expensive for people to get coverage. So, that's been the big balance that House Republican leaders have been trying to strike. Once you give to conservatives, you're taking away from moderates. We'll see how this goes, but they're definitely still looking for moderate votes on this before they can go forward with a vote.
All right, Steve Chaggaris, thank you.
Thanks.